Brian Fritz here with TJ Perkins as we get set for the beginning of the Cruiserweight Classic tournament here at the WWE Performance Center. First impressions, is it the first time you've had an opportunity to go to the Performance Center?
Yeah, my previous experiences with the company, they hadn't had set up the Performance Center, and NXT wasn't yet set in place. So I mean, this is all new to me as far as seeing the way the system has evolved. I mean, it's mind blowing. You know?
Yeah.
The scope of it is incredible. I feel like I'm at the NFL Combine or something like that. You know, like I play for the Lakers or something like that. Yeah, they have everything here. I mean, they really, it's the ultimate destination, I guess, for preparing people for what we're doing. So.
Let me get this one out of the way. You talked about previous experiences with the company.
Yeah.
Are you still mad that Marty Jannetty for taking your match against The Miz back in 2009?
Oh, he was just following orders. I should take it up with Snoop Dogg. It really is what it is. But no, I mean, he might have saved me a crap kicking that day. Miz looked like he was pretty ready to go. So yeah, no, I think it may have been a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was it like to get that call and say, hey, we've got an opportunity to use you on television?
It was weird because I remember that day I didn't have my tights with me, so the seamstress made me some real last minute very quickly and got me ready to go, and it was like okay, we got this you're gonna be in this position tonight, you got to do this, and then I'm doing what? I got to wear what? Good luck, kid. And I'm out here. What am I? And so that was about as fast as it went. So,
but that's part of the wrestling business. It's just kind of on the fly, isn't it?
Oh yeah, hurry up and wait and get out there. Like that's pretty much the way it is.
So you are one of the more experienced people when it comes to this tournament. So you've been wrestling now for, I believe, 18 years. So
yeah, coming up on that now.
Yeah. So how is it that at the age of 13 you already knew what you wanted to do for your life?
Oh, I knew what I wanted to do when I was like 2. I had a very I don't know if introvert is the right word for it, but my perception of doing professional wrestling and performing like this was I was so into professional wrestling that I thought everybody grows up to do this. Like everybody's going to grow up to be an entertainer on this stage. So I think, oh, my dad's going to do this. My friends are going to do this. We're all doing this. We love it. We all love it, right? Like that's what I thought. I knew full well there were doctors and firefighters and other stuff in the world, and my parents obviously weren't doing this stuff. But my mind was so on it that I just thought there can't be another possible destination for me other than this. I don't know why. I just always knew that this is what I would do. I don't know why that is. And yeah, so when I got old enough to formulate more adult thoughts about it, I thought, okay, well, I can do this, and I just fell into it in sort of a serendipitous way.
And I think people know the story about you starting to train out in L.A. At the age of 13.
Yeah.
Lucha Libre companies out there. What's it like going through that process of saying, I want to start training right now. I know I can't do this everywhere, so I've got to be kind of coy about it and be able to go out there and train and be able to start doing what you wanted to do.
Well, when the way it kind of came about, it was sort of a whirlwind because it was kind of a false start a little bit because, I mean, keep in mind, to set the tone, this was 1998, so internet wasn't a big thing at the time, and there's no social media, there's no Google, YouTube, MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, there's none of that, and message boards weren't big for all of this. People were still just kind of getting into chat rooms, sort of. It was a very primitive time.
Sure.
For all this, and
we were all in those Prodigy chat rooms at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. And
yeah.
their DVDs weren't a medium yet. People didn't carry cell phones. This was word didn't travel as fast as it does now. So it was hard to figure it out. So you kind of you had what little there was on the still infant internet, and then you had PWM magazine, and you had WWF magazine. That was it, So I would write letters. If I don't know if people write letters anymore, but I wrote letters. Like I would write a letter to Dean Malenko's gym and Al Snow's gym. And Shawn Michaels hadn't opened his gym yet. That's how far back this was. But I knew I sent away for information on it. And I was only 13, so you can't, I couldn't relocate. And usually you got to be 18, 21 years old to sign up and that type of thing. And so Lucha Libre came about just because I happened to be in an area that's a hotbed for authentic Lucha Libre in Los Angeles. So I was able to get started, and the way that it kind of worked out was like I would, train every night, and then on like a Thursday night or a Friday morning, depending on where the show was that I was trying to make, I would ditch school and get picked up with a couple guys riding their car to the show, whether we go from Southern California to like San Francisco or Vegas, Phoenix, maybe across the border to Tijuana, wherever the show was, and then we would work, and I would perform, and then I would jump in a different car who I know was going to the next city I was going to. So I would kind of car hop and like, oh, you guys are going to Phoenix after this because I'm going to that show too. Because the regionally speaking guys were doing the same but different stuff. So I'd jump in a different one and go back to San Diego or Los Angeles and do a show there, and then go to San Francisco or whatever. And then I would do, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like that, and then just get dropped back off at school on Monday morning, and then, finish, go the week again. And then Thursday, Friday, I'd get ready and leave again. So
You realize you were in the perfect location where you could actually pull all this off.
to do it like that, yeah. So I imagine if I lived somewhere else, like it would have to be like if I lived in Philadelphia, I could wrestle in New York or maybe as far as Ohio or Jersey, down the coast a little bit, Washington or something like that, and do a similar type thing. Maybe go up to Canada, but like that would have been like the other way to do it. Otherwise, yeah, I mean it was. There's maybe 3 or 4 regional locations in the country where you could kind of set up little loops like that, and I just happened to be able to do that.
And being out in LA, you had an opportunity to train at the New Japan Dojo.
Yeah.
Who were some of the guys that were there? Because was Daniel Bryan there at the time? Did you train with him, or
He wasn't there at first, but he did come along shortly after we started, and he was one of my primary training partners. Yeah, I mean, he was always like a big brother to me because we kind of started there at the same time in New Japan, and he's obviously a little older than me, so like, he was more like in the prime, like entering the prime of adulthood, and I was coming out of like adolescence in my teens. So like I would look up to him and some of the other guys, we could perform and do the same things, but they were further ahead in life. So I'd look at them like, okay, I'm learning from their experiences a little bit. But yeah, so they had started a gym out there, and they needed a first class. I was one of the first, I guess, like recruits. Myself, Samoa Joe. And a tag team by the name of Havana Pitbulls.
Mhm.
That's Rocky Romero and Ricky Reyes. And that it was us. I mean, we were there when the floor was just dirt. We were hanging the bags and rolling out the mats and setting up the ring, and we that was us. And then Brian came along shortly after that, and we were the first group of guys out of there.
miserable times? But then when you look back, kind of fun times. I'm sure.
I mean,
Right?
it was incredible. It's a hard life, and for me, like especially being young, I became what is known as they call it a young boy in
Mhm.
that culture, and so I would get shipped off to Tokyo and have to do it like really do it, like sweep floors and wake up in the morning. I'd tend to the kitchen or like carry guys' bags, um, you know, hand heavyweight soap in the shower to like do whatever chores they asked me to do, and do all the squats and push-ups and get smacked around for making mistakes, that type of thing. So I mean, it's a hard life. It's kind of like being in the military, but it is rewarding. It instills discipline in you for the future. Like I think you become a more patient person because of it. So
Yeah, I would think so. And you talk about going to New Japan. You're still the youngest American, I believe, to ever go work in Japan. Is that correct for New Japan?
I believe so.
Because you were what, 18 years, 3 months, something like that?
Not even. I was 18 in like a couple weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was already in the dojo when I was 17, but they couldn't really like send me off to Tokyo and like process a visa and a contract at that age. So
Sure.
it was like as soon as I turned 18, they're like, which is September. They're like, great, because we have a tour and a Tokyo Dome show in October. Here, we're processing your stuff now. So then, like 3 weeks later, I was on a plane to Tokyo.
Incredible, right?
Yeah, it's weird. I went from English class to a first class seat to getting off the plane and being handed $1,000 in yen and then going and wrestling in Cork and Hall and performing, like walking down the ramp at Tokyo Dome and seeing all this stuff. Like, yeah, it's a weird life. Very irresponsible for a kid to have.
But I think that's one of the great things when you talk about just how unique the wrestling business can be and the experiences that you have, that you probably can't have these kind of experiences in any other profession.
I mean, it's weird because it's for my personal experience was kind of like when you see a kid go from high school to the pros, like Kobe Bryant going to the Lakers. Like he signed he had to his parents co-signed his Laker contract when he was 17.
Right.
So I mean, he was going from English class to the Great Western Forum, and that's kind of how I felt. So a lot of times I'll look up to athletes that were in that position. I kind of look at them as some of my heroes too, outside of this industry, because as a performer, I mean, they're performing too. Like TV timeouts in a sports game is as the same like what we're doing. Like they're working off of their own production cues. They just happen to have a little bit different of a clock and stuff to work with. But I look at them and what they go through from a distance, and I can relate to it. I can relate to what it must have been like for like Kobe or something like that. Like to go from height, what a shock to your system to go from that to this, and to have so much responsibility, to have so much provided for you, and to have so many doors open for you like overnight. Like it's weird. It's hard to handle. I mean, I didn't handle it well when I was a kid. So.
Well, tell me about this one story about you've mentioned this before about how you bet it all, you lost, and you were homeless for a little while. What exactly happened?
So at an early age, I was blessed with being able to do things like really quickly, because I had already been performing for a few years at that point. So when I turned 18 and it became easier to officially do stuff like in a more professional capacity, like the floodgates opened. It was like New Japan, CMLL, Ring of Honor, TNA, all these things started coming about. People could actually process plane tickets. I could go to Europe, I could go to Canada and stuff like that. I lived in 4 different countries during that time. And so like my bucket list for this industry was knocked out like by the time I was 21. Like I did Raw and SmackDown and trained in a couple different developmental territories and stuff, and I had gotten the experience of this system or previous iterations of this system. And so it's like, okay, I did everything, I've seen everything I wanted to see at that point. So I knocked out my bucket list. But like being that young and that immature, I mean, you don't really appreciate it. When you're a kid and that stuff comes to you, a lot of people, they don't appreciate it. And so in some ways I was beyond my years, but in many ways I hadn't grown up yet. And I think I had a terrible attitude at that time. So, I wanted to chase an opportunity to actually work for WWE at the time. In order to commit yourself to certain things, you have to let other things go. Some of that's a scheduling thing, some of it's a creative thing. So in the process of that, things move fast in this industry. So spots get filled when you give them up, and places like doors get shut on you, and you can't just turn back and go back to other things. And I headed down a path that turned out to be a dead end for me. When I turned around, all the other off ramps were now closed.
Yeah.
So it was like starting all over again. And I think it was kind of like just Murphy's Law of timing. Like it was in the middle of the recession, and I had been a performer all my life. So I went from 13 to 22, 23, and I never had a job. So there's no job experience. And if I had it, it was, like I said, you're not getting a job in the recession. So it's like I would be sitting in like Baskin Robbins trying to apply for a job, and there's a college graduate in a suit next to me that just got denied. Like there's no chance I'm getting one. So like I couldn't do anything. I tried to pump gas. I tried to clean toilets. I tried to move shipping crates in warehouses. Nobody would give me a job anywhere. So it was just really starting all over. Luckily, Florida has a lot of wrestling shows and dive bars and things on like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. So between, collecting coins and Walmart parking lots in the middle of the night to try to, buy some soup or something, and then being able to do those shows during the week, it was like really kind of rebuilding everything from the ground up. And little by little, I got everything back. So.
Yeah. And it's an incredible story. And it's something that, I mean, those are life lessons that you go through, especially in this business, that make you who you are today. And, you talk about you're still in your early 30s, but you're probably one of the more mature people here, one of the more experienced people here. Not that there's anything wrong with being a little bit immature, because that's wrestling, man. It's entertainment.
Yeah, no, I hope so. I think not only do I look younger than I am, I think I fit in more with like younger generation coming up than I do with older generation. Like I'm a weird case. I'm kind of stuck in between generations. I had to grow up real fast because of performing and doing all this. So I was around at 13, 15 years old. Like I was around guys that were 30, 32 years old in the prime of their life. So I was having to kind of live life learning off of them. So I skipped a lot of my younger years. And then now it's like I fit more in with a previous generation that's coming up behind me than I do the generation that was ahead of me. It's like I didn't even have my own generation. I just was stuck in between them.
But it's a cool story, at least. And, you've got, like I said, you've got all these life experiences. I think too, when you talk about the different places that you've worked, obviously being out on the West Coast, you've worked for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and just kind of the intimate atmosphere that they have.
Yeah.
How would you compare that to like at Full Sail? Because you've had an opportunity to work there once now, when it comes to this tournament. So can you compare the two, in how they compare with one another?
Well, I mean, this industry is really a mature person. It's a game of life experience, I think. And people think that it's an athletic thing and that type of thing. And it is, but it also isn't. Like it's really a game of life experience. And so, when you're playing to different rooms are different, but in a lot of ways they're the same because people are the same. It's really about stripping away all the details and finding a common denominator in people and communicating to them in the form of your art. Everybody is reciprocating what you do and communicating back in vocal ways, or sometimes in very vocal ways. And really it's about taking that and seeing how you could communicate back with your art. So I mean, there's wrestling is really a universal language in our industry. So we use it. Every room can be the same, but it's the rhythm can be different. So like Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and the Legion Hall I think it's really it's become an iconic place now, especially for them because it's taken on a life of its own.
Yeah.
It's like a smaller scale of like what MSG meant to a lot of fans, like for years, for a lot of sports and different industries too. And I think that it's become a label to itself, which is really cool because that's a niche that it takes years for a lot of places to find, and it speaks to the culture of what we're doing.
Yeah, and for someone like yourself, you talk about wrestling being an art. You've had an opportunity to travel around the world, wrestle so many different places, so many different styles. What's that like now coming into this Cruiserweight Classic tournament where there are so many different people from around the world and there's so many different styles? We talk about Cruiserweight, but we're talking about strong style. We're talking about submission wrestling. We're talking about technical wrestling. We're talking about high flyers. I mean, there's a little bit of everything out there.
Yeah, it's I'm really blown away by the field that we have here. I mean, the WWE did such an incredible job scouting, performers for this, and I mean it when I say that a lot of people are going to they're just going to fall in love with and become fans of so many new faces when they see this. Because I mean, I did. I was blown away by the different representatives that we have in this tournament. I think my experiences being around the world, I'm able to. I don't want to say that it's like kind of like looking at like an adult looking at their children, but it's like I look at all these different arts that I like lived in the culture of it. Like I lived in Mexico, I lived in Japan, I lived in Canada, all these different places, and I was in Europe and so I got like an authentic education and all this stuff, and now I'm seeing it being applied by people. It's there's a sense of pride, not personal pride, but like a pride in like what you've been a part of for so many years, to look at it and it's like, this is progression of the world. Like it's really cool to see it, And the Cruiserweight Classic is such a linchpin in our history now. Like I genuinely think we're going to look back at this in 10, 20 years the way that people in my generation looked at the Super J Cup. We're going to look at it as a turning point in our culture of an industry and what we're doing. It's more to say that it's a generational landmark is a disservice because it's really once in a lifetime, I think.
Yeah, and I really wonder if this is going to make WWE take a harder look and say we need to do more when it comes to cruiserweights, whether it's with NXT or even with WWE?
I mean, selfishly speaking, it would be amazing for that to kind of become sort of a crusade and a path that gets opened because of that. I sort of think that that's already underway, and I think that they're ahead of the curve on it by evidence of what we're doing. But I think that the nature of this, I mean, it is changing the history of this culture and this industry. I mean, it really is like it's not the details of it. I mean, you ask anybody, it's like they never you if you would say you set the tone for 2016 and the Cruiserweight Classic and all this for anybody in even in 2015, they'd tell you you're crazy. 2010, you're crazy.
Yeah.
2000, you're crazy. And here we are. You know, it's amazing to be a part of.
Incredible things happens once they have the WWE network, right? So I also had to ask you this too, being Filipino and growing up as a wrestling fan, what was it like when finally there was a Filipino star in Batista that finally hit WWE? Going, it's about time.
It was amazing. I wish that that we like Filipino people and him together would have been able to embrace it more because it didn't become common knowledge for a long time. You know, I think I sort of became more aware of it like when I saw him like walk out with Manny Pacquiao for like a fight, and you know I started to understand more like this is a representative of us. And I think it's really cool. Like, I feel like it's my responsibility in a way. Like I needed heroes and people to inspire me when like I was down. And I needed that to get to this. And I feel like it's part of my responsibility to provide that now for others in the wake of what I've overcome and moved on from, because now other people can look at that and it's not even people that are performing or doing anything in this industry. They want to be a doctor, they want to be anything. They want to be an editor, they want to make movies, whatever you want to do. People might be able to look at me the way that I looked at I looked at Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin doesn't work in this industry, but like I'll look at him and other people, like Howard Hughes. I'll look at all kinds of different inspirations. And it's like, wow, look at what they did with their life. Look at what they took and created. And if people can look at me and do better than I did, I would be proud. Like I'm happy to provide an inspiration for Filipinos because we don't have a lot of heroes. So like you said, I mean, it was cool to see Batista, and you know we have Manny. And there's really not much else. You know,
Yeah, and Manny's coming back.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I'm pumped. I'm super pumped. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because like I dare say that we might be the most passionate demographic of people, and we like ironically have the least amount of representatives. So I mean, it's such an untapped like source of energy and support that I think would be a big deal. Like I mean, we really Filipino people love to support each other, and we're so non-judgmental, and we're very positive and very charismatic. I think
Yeah.
we make things pretty fun. If nothing else, we turn everything into karaoke. So,
And who doesn't have fun doing karaoke, right?
so yeah, I mean, I'm proud to represent them and to give them, hopefully, like not necessarily an icon in terms of like a selfish thing for myself, but I would like to provide inspiration for them to chase their dreams and do better than I did. You know.
Mhm. Well, TJ, thanks for the time. Appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you in the Cruiserweight Classic and how that goes. And who knows, maybe we'll see you around here a little bit more often when it comes to WWE. If not, we'll definitely see you elsewhere around the world.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure.